and then they just started spitting, like full on, in his face. Can you imagine? You're sitting there, already having the worst month of your life, and the local rabble, the guys who literally live in holes in the ground, start using you for target practice.
Wait, John, we're starting there? Like, no, good morning, everyone? We're just going straight to the spitting?
That is exactly how Job 30 starts, Steph. It is a total, absolute social nosedive. One day you're the gold standard of the city, and the next you're being mocked by people you wouldn't even trust to walk your dog. Literally. He says that.
Okay. We have to get into that. Because that dog's comment, it's a lot. Welcome back to Bible in a Year, making it easier to understand. I'm Stephanie, and I'm here with my husband John, who apparently had an extra large espresso this morning because we are hitting the ground running.
Look, when the text gets this visceral, you can't help but get hyped. We are diving into Job chapters 30 and 31 today. It's the final defense, the closing argument.
It really is. If you've been following along, we just left chapter 29, where Job was reminiscing about his glory days. It was all creamy footsteps and everyone bowing to me. But today is the but now.
The most melancholy but now in history.
And we are back. Well, we're starting the deep dive, I should say. Let's get into the headspace of Job 30. John, you mentioned the dog's comment. Let's read that because it caught me off guard. Job says, "But now they mock me, men younger than I, whose fathers I would have disdained to put with the dogs of my flock."
Savage, right?
It sounds so unjob-like. We've been calling him blameless and upright, but that feels like a total elitist dig. He's basically saying, your dad wasn't even good enough to be my sheepdog's assistant. How do we handle that? Is Job just being a jerk because he's in pain?
That's the big question, isn't it? But here's the modern mirror to help us understand the social structure. In the ancient Near East, your reputation wasn't just a vibe. It was your currency. It was your social security. Job isn't just being mean. He's describing a total collapse of the social order.
Tell me about these guys mocking him. Who are they?
These are the outcasts, Steph, the rabble. Job describes them as people who were scourged from the land. They were so destitute they were gnawing the dry ground and eating mallow and broom shrub roots.
Wait, broom shrub roots? Is that even edible?
Barely. Most commentaries say that stuff was usually used for making charcoal, not lunch. So, imagine the absolute bottom of the social barrel. These people were living in holes in the ground and among the rocks. They were the invisible ones, the ones society had totally written off.
So why are they attacking Job now?
Because the influencer has fallen. Think about it. When someone who has everything suddenly loses it all, the people who have nothing finally have someone they can look down on. It's the ancient version of a viral cancel culture campaign. Job says he has become their byword and their taunting song. They aren't just mocking his pain. They're celebrating his downfall because it makes them feel powerful for a split second.
That is so dark. It's like their mockery is a release for all their own years of being ignored. But Job uses some really intense military language here too. He talks about them tripping his heels and casting up siege ramps against him.
Yes, he feels like a besieged city. He says God has loosed his bowstring. That's a huge metaphor. It's like saying his defense budget has been cut to zero. He's totally exposed. He describes his mockers like a wide breaking in of waters, like a dam bursting, or soldiers pouring through a hole in a city wall. He's saying, I have no protection left. Everyone, even the people I used to help, is rolling over me like a storm.
And it's not just the people, right? It's the loneliness. I was looking at verse 29, and it's so haunting. He says, I am a brother of jackals and a companion of ostriches. I always thought that just meant he was hanging out in the desert, but there's a sound element to that, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. The soundscape of despair. Jackals and ostriches aren't just desert animals. They're known for these piercing, mournful, wailing cries at night.
Like a woo sound?
Exactly. Some travelers say the ostrich sound is so doleful, it sounds like a lion's roar. But sadder. Job is saying, the only things that understand my voice right now are the things that scream in the dark. His vibe isn't just off. His entire life soundtrack has been remixed into a funeral dirge.
He even says his harp has turned to mourning and his pipe to the voice of those who weep. That really hits home for me. You know how when you're going through something really hard, you can't even listen to your favorite upbeat songs? They just, they feel wrong.
It's distorted aesthetics. Pain changes how you process beauty. Job looks at his musical instruments, things that used to be for worship or hanging out with friends, and now they just feel like vehicles of lament.
And through all of this, he's looking at God. He says, I cry out to you, and you do not answer me. He feels like God is just standing there, regarding him, like God is just an audience member watching the tragedy.
That's the pivot into the next chapter, Steph. He's done asking, why me? And he's ready to say, check the records. He's basically saying, if God won't answer, I'm going to sign my name to my life and wait for the verdict.
It's the ultimate audit. And honestly, chapter 31 is one of the most radical ethical documents in the whole Bible. It touches on everything from workplace culture to what you're looking at on your phone.
Oh, we are definitely getting into the browser history part of this.
We are. But first, we're going to take a quick break to let John go get another shot of espresso. God help us all. And when we come back, we're talking about the covenant with the eyes and why Job was thousands of years ahead of his time when it came to digital purity.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with segment 2.
And we are back in the booth. I've got my notebook out. John has somehow managed to fit even more energy into his body, and we are ready to tackle what I think is the most convicting part of this entire book. Honestly, guys, if you've ever felt like your phone was a little too tempting, this is the chapter for you.
Oh, it's 100% the digital purity chapter of the Bronze Age. We are in Job 31, and we're starting with one of the most famous and probably most quoted verses in the entire Bible when it comes to integrity. Job says, I have made a covenant with my eyes. How then could I gaze at a virgin?
Okay, but John, let's be real for a second. We live in a world that is practically designed to make us look. I mean, you can't even scroll through a recipe for sourdough bread without an ad popping up that is, well, let's just say it's not about bread. Is Job just being a super monk here? Is he saying we have to walk around with blinders on?
Not quite. But here's the modern mirror, Steph. Think about the social media algorithm. You know how you're on TikTok or Instagram and you linger on a video for just 3 seconds too long? The algorithm sees that. It's like, oh, you like that? Here's 10,000 more videos just like it.
It's like it's reading your mind. It's actually kind of terrifying.
Exactly. And Job was thousands of years ahead of the Silicon Valley engineers on this. The Hebrew word he uses for covenant is berit. It's not a suggestion or a New Year's resolution that you break by February. It's a literal, binding legal contract. Job basically sat his eyes down in a boardroom and said, listen, we are signing a deal today. You don't get to ogle. You don't get to window shop.
Window shopping. I love that analogy. Because we often tell ourselves, oh, it's fine to look as long as I don't touch. It's the harmless glance, right?
But that's the trap. The commentators make this huge distinction between the glance and the gaze. You can't control what pops up on your feed or who walks past you on the street. That first look, that's just biology. But the second look, the lingering, that's where the covenant kicks in. Job says if he takes that second look, he's basically inviting a fire that burns to destruction into his life.
That fire language is so intense. It reminds me of that song, you know the one, about the slow fade. It's a slow fade when black and white have turned to gray. Job understands that you don't just wake up one day and ruin your life. It starts with what you're allowing in through the sense gates of your eyes.
Right. The eyes are the gateway to the heart. And here's the kicker, Steph. Job isn't just worried about his reputation here. He's living coram Deo. That's a fancy Latin way of saying, before the face of God. He asks in verse 4, does he not see my ways and count my every step?
That is such a heavy thought. Imagine if every time you opened an incognito tab or every time you checked out someone's profile you shouldn't be on, there was a little counter in the corner of your screen showing that God was watching. That would change your browsing habits real fast.
It would be the ultimate accountability app. But for Job, it wasn't about fear. It was about integrity. This whole chapter is what scholars call an oath of purgation, or a negative confession. He's basically saying, if I have walked with falsehood, or if my heart has been led by my eyes, then let God weigh me in honest scales.
He's literally handing over his unlocked phone and saying, check the deleted folders, God. Check the browser history. I don't know about you, but that makes me sweat a little bit. It's one thing to be good when people are watching at church, but it's another thing to be upright in the dark when it's just you and a screen.
And it's not just about lust either. Job covers everything. He talks about walking with falsehood and hurrying after deceit. In the modern mirror, this is like the person who embellishes their resume just a little bit, or the hustle culture, where you're willing to step on anyone to get that promotion. Job says, if I've done that, let others eat what I have sown.
It's like he's inviting the curse if he's lying. He's so confident in his internal audit that he's willing to bet his entire harvest on it. He's saying his heart hasn't been led by his eyes, meaning his principles weren't swayed by what looked expedient or easy in the moment.
Expediency is a big one for our generation, isn't it? We want the results now. We want the success now. And sometimes we're willing to take a shortcut with the truth to get there. But Job understood that a spot on the hands eventually corrupts the whole person. He was determined to keep his browser history clean, not just from images, but from lies.
It really is the ultimate challenge. Job is saying that the vile state of his body, all those boils and the skin turning black, doesn't mean his soul is vile. He's clinging to this internal purity even when the whole world thinks he's a criminal.
Exactly. He's like, I'm in a mud pit, but my conscience is a palace. He refuses to let the crowd or the contempt of the clans make him silent. He's standing his ground.
Okay, I think we all need a minute to process that unlocked phone analogy. I'm definitely going to be thinking about my mental click differently today.
I'm just saying, if the algorithm is watching, God is definitely watching.
We're going to take one more break, and when we come back, we're going to get into the hidden gem. John, you've been teasing this for 2 days. Something about a literal X marking the spot?
Oh, it is the coolest linguistic connection in the whole book. We're going to look at Job's signature and why it looks exactly like the cross. You do not want to miss this final segment.
We'll be right back. And we are back from our little stretch break, though John spent the entire time doing mountain climbers in the corner while reciting Hebrew paradigms. So break is a relative term in this house.
Hey, you gotta keep the blood flowing, Steph. We've got too much ground to cover in this final stretch to be sluggish. We are officially closing out Job's big defense, his final word, and it gets so practical it actually hurts a little bit.
It really does. We're in the back half of chapter 31, and Job starts talking about how he treats people, specifically his employees. And honestly, John, if you read verses 13 through 15, it sounds like it could have been written by a Gen Z corporate consultant last week.
Oh, 100%! It's the shared womb ethics. Job says, if I have rejected the cause of my male or female servants when they brought a complaint against me, what then shall I do when God rises up? And then he drops the mic in verse 15. Did not he who made me in the womb make them? Did not the same one fashion us in the womb?
That is radical for that time period, John. I mean, we're talking about a culture where servants and slaves were often treated as literal property, almost like livestock. But Job is looking at the org chart of his estate and saying, there is no hierarchy in our humanity.
It's the modern mirror of the toxic workplace. Think about the boss who treats the intern like they're invisible, or the manager who plays power politics in the group chat. Job is saying that management isn't a position of power. It's a position of stewardship. He's saying, one day, God is going to interview my subordinates and ask them how I treated them. That is a terrifying annual review, right?
Can you imagine? God, the CEO was great, but he always ignored my Slack messages when I had a legitimate concern. Job basically says he gave his staff the right to file a complaint. He created a safe environment for feedback thousands of years before HR departments existed. It's that dialoguer mindset, having fewer confrontations and more actual dialogue.
And it's because he understands ontological equality, the idea that we all have the same maker and the same origin story. Whether you're the guy with the corner office or the guy cleaning the floors, you both came from the same fashioning in the womb.
It's so beautiful. But then he takes it even further. He starts talking about the land itself. In verse 38, he says, if my land cries out against me and its furrows weep together.
This is the part that always gets me, the weeping furrows. It's like an ancient environmental audit. Job is so confident in his integrity that he invites the literal dirt to take the witness stand and testify against him if he's exploited the soil or the people working it.
It's that voice of the resources idea. If the land can cry out, then every invoice, every paycheck, every acre of land has a voice in God's courtroom. For a modern listener, this is like saying, is my business sustainable? Am I taking more from the world than I'm giving back? Job treats his wealth as loaned capital from God, not something he just owns and can strip mine for profit.
Exactly. It's the rental agreement analogy. We're just tenants here. And if we break the spirit of our tenants or devour the yield without payment, the land itself becomes a witness to our sin.
Okay, John, we're getting close to the end of the segment, and you've been hyping up this hidden gem since the intro. We're at verse 35. Job says, "Oh, that I had someone to hear me. Behold, my signature is here. Let the Almighty answer me." What is so special about that signature?
Okay, guys, buckle up. This is the coolest part of the whole book. In the original Hebrew where it says signature or mark, the word is ta.
Ta? Like the letter?
Yes, ta is the very last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. But here's the kicker. Back in Job's day, in the Paleo-Hebrew script, the letter ta wasn't the blocky character we see today. It was written as two crossed lines. It was a literal X, or a cross.
Wait, so Job is finishing his defense and he says, "Here's my mark," and he literally draws a cross?
He signs his life with the sign of the cross. He's saying, this is my final word. I'm staking everything on this mark. The early church fathers lost their minds over this. They saw it as this massive Easter egg pointing directly to Jesus. Job is the righteous sufferer who is crying out for a mediator, someone to stand between him and God, and he signs his plea with the very symbol that Jesus would eventually hang on to become that mediator.
That is goosebumps. Job is basically saying, I'm putting my cross on the table. Let God answer me. He doesn't know it yet, but the answer to all his suffering, the mediator he's begging for, is going to sign the final check for humanity with that exact same mark.
It's the God's signature event. Just like Job used the taw to authenticate his defense, God used the cross to authenticate his love for us. Job says, I would wear the indictment like a crown. And we see Jesus literally wearing a crown of thorns while carrying that cross.
It changes everything. It turns Job from a victim into a type of Christ. He's the one who is falsely accused, mocked by the rabble, and yet he maintains his integrity and eventually intercedes for the very friends who attacked him.
And that is where the words of Job end. Verse 40, the words of Job are ended. He's made his case. He's signed the cross. Now, he just has to wait for the Almighty to speak.
And boy, does he speak. But that's for next time. John, I think we need to wrap this up before your head actually explodes from the theological taw revelation.
Fair enough. Let's get to the takeaway.
We have covered a lot today, from the social nosedive of Chapter 30 to the browser history covenant of Chapter 31. But if there's one thing to take into your week, it's this. Integrity isn't about being perfect. It's about being transparent before the only audience that matters.
Exactly. Job was willing to have his life audited because he lived coram Deo, before the face of God. He didn't care about the contempt of the clans or the mockery of the rabble because he knew his Maker saw every step.
So here is your action step for today. Pick one gate in your life. Maybe it's your eyes and what you scroll through, or maybe it's your gate at work and how you treat those under your authority. This week, make a covenant in that one area. Not a wish, but a taw, a signature commitment to act as if God is the only one in the room.
Do that, and you'll start to realize that a clear conscience is a better pillow than a big reputation ever was. Thanks for hanging out with us on the Deeper Dive.
Don't forget to subscribe and share this with that one friend who needs a little modern mirror in their Bible study. We'll see you next time.